Hello and welcome to Direct Initiative, the podcast where we talk about direct democracy and the importance of ballot measures. I'm Alex Kawa, and today we're going to be talking about psychedelic drugs, or more specifically, how there's been an increased movement around this issue, in large part thanks to the initiative process, because just recently, earlier this month, we got this news out of California. Quote, California is on its way to becoming the third state in the country to decriminalize psychedelics after the state assembly passed a bill that would allow adults 21 and older to possess and use small amounts of plant and mushroom psychedelics. Backers of the push to decriminalize psychedelic drugs have drawn attention to the promising mental health benefits offered by certain entheogenic plants and fungi. Preliminary data from the Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research has shown psilocybin therapy can reduce major depressive disorder symptoms for up to a year. The passage of Senate Bill 58 in California comes after two states made history by enacting legislation to decriminalize psychedelics. In 2020, Oregon voters approved the Oregon Psilocybin Services Act, otherwise known as Measure 109, which was the first law in the U.S. to establish a regulatory framework for receiving psilocybin. 2 years later, Colorado followed suit by legalizing 5 natural psychedelic substances. So in no uncertain terms, as the article here explains, it is the initiative process that has essentially led to more states now decriminalizing psychedelics. That's what happened in Oregon, that's what happened in Colorado, and now California is taking note, and they're doing a similar thing through the legislative process. And this is exactly what we saw with marijuana legalization. I've brought this example up several times now, but in Vermont, they were the first state to legalize marijuana through the legislative process. But by that point, this was in early 2018, so many states, including the District of Columbia, had already legalized marijuana through the initiative process. And obviously it never would have happened. Like Vermont would have never legalized it recreationally through the legislative process if there hadn't been so many states that had passed it through the initiative process. That momentum never would have been there. Or maybe it would have, but it wouldn't have been as kind of rapid as it is. I mean, now just 11 years removed from the first successful votes on legalization, we're kind of standing on the precipice of nationwide legalization. So it's kind of crazy. And that wouldn't have happened if it weren't for, once again, the initiative process. And the reason I wanted to talk about this, I know the story is a few weeks old, but I wanted to talk about it because this is actually happening here in Massachusetts, which is where I go to school. That's where I am. And I actually went to the grocery store this weekend, and I saw a petitioner by the entrance, and she was saying, hey, do you want to sign this petition? I'm like, what is it about? And it's for legalizing psychedelics in Massachusetts for like mental health use. And unfortunately, I couldn't sign it because I'm not a registered Massachusetts voter. Like I said, I just go to school here. But I was like, I'm sorry I can't sign, but I 100% support this. And I looked it up, and after I got home, and it turns out, hey, they're actually trying to get this on the ballot in Massachusetts. The proposals from the Massachusetts for Mental Health Options campaign are nearly identical, except that one would give adults a homegrown option and the other would not. Accordingly, the final summaries largely mirror each other with that one policy distinction. We appreciate the Attorney General's decision to certify both of our petitions, the campaign said in a statement with Marijuana Moment on Wednesday. We believe that Massachusetts voters should have the opportunity to expand mental health access to natural psychedelics. Research from top healthcare organizations like Johns Hopkins and Harvard Medical School show promising results that natural psychedelics can be successful in treating anxiety, depression, and PTSD. In particular, we know veterans and first responders who suffer mental health issues need more help and tools for treatment. Advocates said, the ballot question we are proposing will offer relief and help to those in need. Now, one thing it's important to point out is talk to a doctor before taking these if you're doing it for mental health treatment or anything. Like, don't take my word for it. Don't take the word of anybody else, because natural doesn't always mean good. They say, oh, it's natural medicine, and that sounds better because, oh, natural. It's like native to this. No, it doesn't automatically make it good. It doesn't automatically make it effective. You can have a bad experience, but I mean, obviously, look, just from like a individual liberty perspective, I 100% support this, and I hope it passes here in Massachusetts. I hope it gets on the ballot. Actually, that'd be the first thing, obviously. And, you know, Massachusetts isn't the only state that's doing this. They're also doing this in Michigan. They're trying to get a similar psychedelic decriminalization thing onto the ballot. But another aspect of this that makes psychedelic legalization or decriminalization worth it, aside from, you know, the freedom aspect of it, aside from the mental health benefits, is also that, according to a 2022 study in the International Journal of Drug Policy, use of psychedelics is associated with a reduced daily use among opioids. And that's especially important for here in Massachusetts because Massachusetts has the 19th highest death rate from opioid overdoses, with a rate of 36.8 per capita as of 2021, according to the CDC. And so obviously the legalization of marijuana, there's been plenty of studies that have shown that would alleviate the effects of the opioid epidemic because people would kind of be able to wean themselves off of it. And psychedelics would do a similar thing according to this. And, maybe more research needs to be done, but I think that these results are promising. And I think it goes to show that the drugs are winning the war on drugs. We're seeing it with marijuana, and now I think we're seeing a similar thing with psychedelics. And while I don't think the movement will be as rapid as it is with marijuana, we still need to officially win that battle by getting it legalized at the federal level. And it's the same thing with psychedelics, too, because they're still illegal at the federal level. It's just because of the goodwill of the federal government not interfering with state laws that states that have legalized marijuana are able to sell them. And that's kind of what will be a similar thing if psychedelics are eventually decriminalized. But overall, this is definitely a positive development, and I'm happy to see states like California, Massachusetts, Michigan doing this stuff, and of course, Colorado and Oregon, which already have done it. And, California doing it through the legislative process is, once again, showing the power of the initiative because people are able to see the momentum for this issue, and they're able to see where it's going. And so they know they have to adjust and get with the times. And that's, once again, something that we reiterate on the show all the time, why the initiative process is so important. Because every major change in American history has started at the state and local level. And the ballot measure process that advocates in several states are able to use to get certain issues on the ballot, that is what is going to drive change. That's what's driven change on marijuana legalization. That's what's driving change on other issues like ranked choice voting. And now, of course, as we're seeing here with psychedelic decriminalization, which again is important not only for expanding mental health options, but for alleviating the impacts of the opioid epidemic, which once again, here in New England is especially pretty bad. And that's why I obviously support these, and I'm sure we'll talk more about them as we get closer to the 2024 election. Hopefully we can talk more about it. Hopefully it's good news. Hopefully it does get on the ballot here in Massachusetts and as well as in Michigan. And hopefully Governor Newsom in California does sign the psychedelic decriminalization bill. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but things are looking pretty good. And once again, the drugs are winning the war on drugs. So that's about it. Thank you all very much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you're listening on YouTube, please leave a like and subscribe down below. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you leave a good review and follow the podcast. I will see everybody soon. I'm Alex Kawa, and this is Direct Initiative.